Ever wonder why some people are able to hold conversations forever, with people hanging on every single word they say, while your conversations feel just about as good as wet socks do? It's awkwardly uncomfortable. You and I call those people natural communicators, also known as extroverts, or also show-offs. Today, we're going to break down the mindset of the the extroverts, so you can feel as comfortable in conversations as they do. Strategies and frameworks you can take and use over and over and over again to enhance your conversations. And a secret trick that gives you infinite ways to keep a conversation going and get others to love the conversations that they have with you. But first, what's the biggest mistake people like you and I make when trying to improve our social skills? You might go do a quick search on Google and find advice like, just be yourself, or don't worry so much, or just go talk to people. And for introverts, that advice is as easy to follow as beating Usain Bolt in a race, when you're wearing flip-flops. And you've tried that process enough times to where now you do whatever you need to do in order to avoid social interactions at all costs. If you haven't guessed by the title of this video, never running out of things to say is easy actually. And the good news is, there is absolutely no downside to improving your communication skills. Only upside. And it's upside for every area of your life. And improving your ability to communicate comes down to 3 simple areas. First is knowledge. Second is repetition of that knowledge. And finally, inhibition or lack thereof. That being said, you can have the best word tracks and the smoothest lines ever, but if you don't have the right mindset, they won't do a thing for you. I wish someone would have told me this when I was 18 years old, but you don't have to carry the entire weight of a conversation on your shoulders. If a conversation grows stale, or the other person just seems uninterested, or they leave the conversation without validating each and every single one of my needs, you don't have to blame yourself for it. I'm going to give you a simple way to help take that weight off your shoulders, but before diving any further, I helped a cousin of mine with his social game last year. At the start of his journey, he would often say things like, "Look, everything you're saying is simple and it makes perfect sense. But in the moment, I'm just so in my head about what you would say in this situation, I just freeze up." I told him, that means you aren't present in the conversation, and you can't be, because you're in your own head. Now that's a part of the learning process that will happen for everyone. And my goal here is to help you feel comfortable in any conversation and enjoy them as well. But to get to that point, information must become internalized. And that's when you become a natural communicator. So don't give up on yourself midway through this journey, and I'm not going to let you do that. Well, that's great, Stickman. I won't give up on myself, and I'll try to take the pressure off my shoulders, but I still don't know what to say. And that's the beautiful thing. You don't have to know what to say.
What?
If you look up the definition of conversation, you'll see it's a talk, especially an informal one, between 2 or more people in which news and ideas are exchanged. Feeling like you have to fill every pause in a conversation is pressure, and it's a burden that's impossible for you to carry. The best advice I ever received to improve my own communication is to ask more questions. Which, it makes a lot of sense when you think back to the last conversation you had with a 3-year-old. "What you doing?" "I'm cooking dinner." "Why?" "So you aren't hungry anymore." "Why?" "So you can grow big and strong." "But why?" I think you get the point. Technically, that conversation can go on and on forever. And a 3-year-old is the one controlling the conversation. So if a toddler can do it, so can you. Thankfully for us, we can ask questions other than why. Although it is a good question, it gets very annoying after a while. Have you ever heard the saying, there are no such things as bad questions? Well, that's not entirely true. Listen to this clip from the David Letterman show and tell me if this conversation is relaxed and comfortable, or if it feels more like wet socks.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Wilmington, Delaware.
Wilmington, Delaware. I don't know many people from Delaware.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is that comfortable or like wet socks? I felt more like wet socks. Let's try that conversation again, and this time I'll change David's questions. So where are you from originally? I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. What do you like most about Wilmington? Oh, it's the river for sure. I have to visit every time I go back. The river. For me, I love visiting Lake Havasu. The water there brings me so much peace. I try to make it out there a few times per year. Why is the river such a draw for you? Just like you said, it's just so peaceful. My parents used to take me when I was younger on walks and to fish. Some of my best memories are on that river, even boating for 4 days straight. It's the only place on earth that feels like home. Truth be told, I'm homesick every time I leave. It makes me question why I ever do leave. Maybe it's from some unresolved childhood trauma. And that's basically my whole life story. Asking good questions, and you get bonus points for asking questions on topics that people love to talk about, that will take the weight off your shoulders while making the conversation easy for them to carry. Notice how little David said in the second example, yet both people felt relaxed? I've never thought about asking more questions before. That's great, but I still don't know what to ask. Want to know a trick that'll help you out even more than asking good questions? It's to give yourself the blessing to pause, to slow down. Think about any interview a CEO does, like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. They are never rushed. They never panic. And the reason is because they give themselves time to think of the best response possible, not just shout the first thing that pops into their head. The person who is quickest to answer usually makes the most mistakes. Feeling like you always have to say something quick is one of the reasons you do feel so uncomfortable. And the need you feel to respond immediately adds more pressure to you. And you don't need to respond immediately. There is power in pausing and slowing down. 3 seconds of a pause may feel like an eternity to you, but it's really nothing. Don't rush to respond. Don't rush to give an answer. Take your time. If needed, you can even say that. For example, what are your thoughts on YouTubers asking you to subscribe? Good question. I need to think about that first. Deep breath, slow exhale. You'd be surprised how understanding others will be, and they will respect you for taking time to think about what they said. I've heard some people feel that YouTube channels asking people to subscribe is annoying, but in my experience, subscribing allows me to let that channel know I receive value from them, and I'll usually comment to let them know what else I'd like their insight on. Wow, that's such a great response. You're amazing. What'd I tell you? If you're present in the conversation and you give yourself a chance to think, because you're human, questions will naturally come to you. For a proven, repeatable strategy you can use over and over and over again, let's take Joe Rogan for example. He is a phenomenal communicator, as evidenced by his podcast being the #1 in the world. He speaks with experts from all different types of backgrounds, from scientists to athletes to philosophers. He is genuinely interested in the conversation at hand, and it would be rude not to be. And in doing so, he can hold a conversation with all of them. But how? One tactic he uses time and time again is the last 3 words trick. When a guest finishes speaking, he will often repeat back the last few words they say. For example,
it's not like I want to take over the world. I just want to make a good living doing what I love. That's all I want, and it's f***ing hard.
I know it's hard.
this allows Joe to help the guest feel heard. It also buys him time to think of an appropriate response and naturally keeps the conversation going. The next step in this process is the transition, and Joe is an expert at this. He does this in every podcast. He looks to talk about topics that both people are interested in. Simple, really, but most people try to keep a conversation going about topics you or the other person aren't even interested in. Of course, those conversations would be difficult. Find 1 to 2 foundational topics that you enjoy to keep in your back pocket. For Joe, one of his topics is DMT. He will find a way to bring it up in most of his podcasts. If the other person bites and has a good reaction, they might end up talking about it for an hour. If the guest isn't a fan, Joe just moves on and finds a different topic to discuss. The way to make this as simple as possible for you in any situation is to understand the next secret. When I learned this from a mentor, I was able to close deals and sales upwards of $100,000, attract my beautiful stick figure wife, and be able to make friends wherever I went naturally. It is so simple, anyone can learn with practice. So look at this example. A girl says, "I love working out. I really enjoy just being in the gym and challenging myself with hard workouts. It's a great exercise and I feel more confident afterwards." There are a few things you can respond to in that statement. Most people choose to respond to the content of what she said. Yeah, I love working out too, especially CrossFit. Or maybe, I feel you. I also like to work out. Actually, one of my favorite things to do is weightlifting. These responses aren't bad per se, but they're not great either. If you want to take it to a more meaningful conversation, you can respond to the emotion of what was said. You can say something like, "Well, what do you love most about working out?" This allows her to talk more about her and what she likes, and people love to do so. Meaning, you're putting the weight of the conversation on someone else, and you don't have to carry it. Or you can say, "When I was younger, I didn't handle challenges well. Felt like the world was unfair and out to get me. Once I got into working out, I felt a sense of accomplishment from challenging myself, and I'm just so grateful for it." Notice some vulnerability added. which helps other people feel more comfortable opening up as well. The response is also focused on the emotion of accomplishment and gratefulness. Positive associations, which encourage conversations to continue. We're all emotional creatures, and the way you build deep, meaningful conversations is to stay away from surface-level questions like David and trigger emotions in conversations, preferably about things people like to talk about. They'll be more than willing to talk forever. A final example response is to address the underlying message of what someone is saying. So, using the same example, notice the difference here in response. I love working out. I really enjoy just being in the gym and challenging myself with hard workouts. It's a great exercise and I feel more confident afterwards. And how's your stamina? Said with strong eye contact and a cocky grin. And kids, that's how I met your mother. But Riz and attraction is a topic for a different video. Go into conversations wanting a good end result, not needing a good result. Wanting and hoping for a good result takes more weight off your shoulders. You've survived every conversation you've had up until this point. You will be okay. Needing a certain outcome affects how you show up in a conversation, the energy you put out and the energy the other person receives from you. If you're anxious, the other person will feel that. And believe me, you do not want to be like me during this video where I need you to subscribe or I'm going to have wet socks for a week. Please do not do that to me. Please.